Hi, this is God of Rabbits. Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about my Path of Exile 3.2 Ethereal Knives Trickster build. This is an evasion and dodge based build with some hybrid defenses such as about 1.5k energy shield. One additional defining characteristic of this build is incredible movement speed, achieved through Queen of the Forest and about 25,000 evasion. Between our evasion, block, dodge, and spell dodge, we are pretty hard to hit. This is a Shaper capable build. You can view a Shaper kill video on my channel, linked below. Hideout tooltip is about 200,000 unbuffed, and path of building shows 400 to 500k under normal mapping situations, reaching as high as 700k with Flasks active. This build can clear most content. I can't say about Uber Elder, but I suspect I would need some gear upgrades to be successful in that fight. This build has limited hardcore viability. It works wonderfully under normal mapping scenarios, but its somewhat limited life pool leaves it a little fragile. I'm currently sitting at 5.7k life and 1.5k energy shield, for a combined pool of about 7,000 hit points. The budget for this build is around 20 exalts, though you can beat Guardians on quite a smaller budget, say around 10 exalts. This build also gets to use the new Mark of the Shaper ring, which gives you mini Shaper balls through the Void Anomaly skill. Your Shaper balls explode under enemies and deal damage over time just like the Shapers do. In case you're wondering, you can tell your balls from Shapers by the fact that the Shapers' balls are bigger than yours. Let's talk about skill gem setup. For our Ethereal Knives setup, we want Ethereal Knives, increased critical strikes, increased critical damage, Spell Echo, Controlled Destruction, and Pierce. Alternatives are, for instance, Empower 4 or maybe Physical to Lightning if you have a lot of elemental damage conversion. Most gems should be 2120, definitely Ethereal Knives, and increased critical strikes, increased critical damage, and Controlled Destruction. You don't necessarily need to have Pierce in your setup, but the alternative is probably Empower 4, which is a large damage boost, but it's a 5-off color Queen of the Forest, and that's incredibly hard to get, so there is some consideration for the chromatic cost of the Queen of the Forest, for instance. In addition, you're going to want to have at least some Pierce with the build because you don't want your Ethereal Knives to stop at the beginning of packs, you want it to rip through, so if you don't get a Pierce support gem, you're going to be looking for Pierce on the tree or on Shaper Elder gear, but you're definitely going to want to have a little bit of Pierce. For our Aura setup, we want Herald of Ash, Grace, and Enlighten. In addition, we are going to socket Hatred for instances where we don't want Grace. Grace is great because it provides movement speed and a tremendous amount of evasion, so we typically have it on, but in instances where we don't, we can turn on Hatred instead. We want to socket these in our Vertex because of the +1 gems. We have a Cast when Damage Taken setup, which consists of Cast when Damage Taken, Immortal Call, Tempest Shield, and Increased Duration. These are all kept at fairly low level, but you can choose what level you want them to be at. In addition, we have Val Haste, Val Clarity, Increased Duration, and Portal. You can slot something else in for Portal if you have some pet gem that you particularly like. Val Clarity is a pretty important addition to this build. It allows us to run without a mana flask. We just pop Val Clarity when we're in a low mana situation and everything's taken care of. For our movement skill setup, we have Whirling Blades along with faster attacks and Fortify. Since this build works with a variety of weapon types, you may not have Whirling Blades available to you. For instance, if you're using a Scepter, you're going to be using Shield Charge, and if you use a Wand, you're going to be using Flame Dash or Lightning Warp, in which case you don't have Fortify available. Finally, we have Ice Golem with minion life and minion damage. Okay, let's talk about gear, and let's start our gear talk by talking about weapons. Our weapon is commonly referred to as a stat stick. This could be a wand, a dagger, or a scepter. I've chosen a dagger here. These are Shaper or Elder influenced, and they have mods such as gain X% of physical damage as extra cold damage, as extra lightning damage, gain X% of elemental damage as extra chaos damage. You want as many of these mods and as high of their tiers as you possibly can get. In addition, we're just looking to round out with good Ethereal Knives mods such as spell damage, crit multi, crit chance, cast speed, different types of spell and elemental damage. The weapon I have here is a 5 exalt dagger, which I multi-modded myself, so it's about 7 exalts I have in the weapon. Probably a little bit under market value, but you can see that it has extra physical damage as lightning and as cold. In addition, a bunch of typical Ethereal Knives spell damage mods. You could dual wield stat sticks for a huge damage increase, but in this build I've decided to use a shield. You're looking for a spell damage shield with evasion if possible. If you can only find an ES shield, you can also get spell crit, for instance. You want high life and high resistances to fill it out. For our chest piece, we're looking at Queen of the Forest. You can see mine here is corrupted for 30% quality. Queen of the Forest provides a lot of movement speed as well as evasion. In addition, with the Trickster Ascendancy, it's providing energy shield as well. That allows us to be a hybrid build with over 1,000 energy shield in addition to our life pool. For our helmet, there are several viable choices. I've chosen the Vertex. You might be interested in Light Poacher or even a rare helmet with life, for instance. They're all fairly good. I've chosen the Vertex because it has a synergy with the Trickster Ascendancy, which provides additional evasion on top of what it already has on it. For our helmet enchantment, we're going to be looking at Ethereal Knives projectile speed or projectile damage as an alternative. Projectile speed gives you additional area of effect, and it's a lot easier to get it on here than anywhere else. For our gloves and boots, we're looking at evasion-based items with high life and resistances, and of course movement speed on your boots. You can run Primburn gloves, especially if you have a lot of additional elemental damage in your build, such as elemental damage conversion. I don't, so I've chosen to run a rare and get a lot of resistances from that slot. For our belt, we're probably looking at a Stygian with high life and resistances. In addition, we can put movement speed on because no other prefix is really great for us. You can also use a Shaper Leather or Rustic with damage mods potentially, but those are a little bit harder to find. So a good Stygian with a good Abyssal Jewel inside of it, it's great. In our Amulet slot, we want a typical Spellcaster Amulet, high damage, high life and resistances on a rare. You can also use crew recharge, especially while you're leveling. It provides projectile speed and movement speed, but it's probably not your end game item. For our first ring slot, we're going to be using a Mark of the Shaper, which is a new opal ring that was introduced this league. For us to use it most effectively, we need to have our other ring slot be an Elder ring so that we can get effectively 80% increased spell damage if our other ring is an Elder item. For our Elder ring, we're going to be looking for the mod Curse Enemies with level X Warlord's Mark on hit. Warlord's Mark is our curse. It provides a lot of mana regen and endurance charges, and the ability to get it on a ring is great, in addition to the fact that we have to have an Elder ring in this slot. To run it out, we're going to be looking at life, any extra damage mods you can possibly get, and resistances. For flasks, I've chosen Life Flasks, a Quicksilver Flask, an Edziri's Promise, and a Diamond Flask. Edziri's Promise and Diamond Flask are tremendous damage increases, and I would certainly suggest them. The rest of them are up to you. Probably definitely want a Life Flask, but for instance, if you wanted to run Taste of Hate, that's certainly available. Whatever suits your playstyle most is what you should run in your Flask setup. For jewels, we want life, spell damage, crit mods, for instance. I'll provide a jewel search in the link in the description of the video below, and you can just click on it and change it to suit your needs. In addition, we're going to have one Ring of Blades, and on that Ring of Blades you're going to have silence immunity because it's easy to get here and you can't get it anywhere else. Okay, let's take a look at the tree. Let's start talking about the Trickster Ascendancy. So we are Shadow Trickster, and in the Trickster Ascendancy we pick up Harness the Void, Swift Killer, Ghost Dance, and Escape Artist. On the left side, Harness the Void and Swift Killer are our offensive nodes, with Swift Killer being the one that provides power and frenzy charges. We don't really have a way to generate them otherwise. And on the right side, we have Ghost Dance and Escape Artist, mostly which provide energy shield and evasion, in addition to some additional goodies like movement speed in certain instances. Since we start as a Shadow, we don't have as much life available to us as, for instance, a Marauder, or if we had the Scion Life Wheel a little bit closer. So you should choose to take every single life node that's available on the tree. In addition, we're going to be looking at physical damage, critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier, spell damage, cast speed. These are typical Shadow spellcaster based nodes. The only keystones we take are acrobatics and phase acrobatics, which aren't strictly necessary, and I wouldn't fault you if you didn't want to take them. I really like the idea of being incredibly hard to hit, and with a huge amount of dodge and a huge amount of evasion, we certainly achieved that. For our Pantheon Major, we're going to be looking at Soul of Brian King, and this is to avoid chain stuns. Chain stuns are one of those things that kills you, and it's not incredibly evident that it has happened, but if you have Soul of Brian King on, you can avoid chain stuns altogether. For our minor power, we're going to be looking at Soul of Ristla, so that we can have our life flasks refill themselves. So those are the basics of this build. It's a fun and powerful take on Ethereal Knives, one of the oldest skills in Path of Exile. Aside from a lack of good-looking MTX for the skill, Ethereal Knives is fast and fun, and I'd recommend it to anyone looking for a good clear speed build. If you enjoyed this build guide, I'd encourage you to like and subscribe as we're trying to build the channel. This has been God of Rabbits, thanks for watching and have a great day.